Welcome to the ScreenCrush Break Room. I'm Ryan Arey, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things that you might have missed in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Episode 5. The episode is titled Truth. Now, this has several meanings. It's the name of the comic series about Isiah Bradley as the first black Captain America, and we're going to talk a lot more about that later on. But also, consider the way that the characters in this episode grapple with different truths. John Walker can't bear to face the truth that he messed up and was a bad Captain America. He lies to Lamar's family, telling them that he killed the man responsible for his death.
I went after him.
He's the one that killed our boy?
Yes.
Bucky has also been running away from the truth, that his life of the Winter Soldier is actually behind him and he now needs to look forward.
I've been making amends.
You weren't amending, you were avenging.
But most importantly, there's the truth of what actually happened to Isiah Bradley.
They erased me?
But like I said, we'll get into that later in the video. The episode shows that truth can depend largely on your own point of view. What's true for Sam isn't necessarily the truth that Karli and the Flag Smashers live every day.
How many times do we have to pay with our lives just to be citizens of this goddamn planet?
But the show isn't saying that truth is in the eye of the beholder. Steve Rogers believed in unyielding principles. Right was right and truth was truth. Something either is true or it isn't, no matter if people choose to believe in it. John Walker killed a man in cold blood, even though he thinks it was justified. Now, this idea that Steve represents pure truth was symbolized by Bucky and Sam's Frisbee session. As they chuck discs between them, they're revealing their personal truths about themselves.
It's just that shield's closest thing I've got left to a family.
It's almost like Steve is there with them, acting as a therapist. I was a little surprised that John Walker was running away at the start of the episode. I thought he would have been proud of what he'd done to this fugitive. Or maybe he was running away from Bucky and Sam. When he's alone, he hears Lamar's voice talking to him.
This suit comes with expectations, bro.
Now, this is similar to the comics, where, years after his parents were murdered, he still talks to them like they're alive. When Walker's alone, you can hear this eerie drone, like the Winter Soldier's theme. It's like the show is saying that Walker is on the same path, to being a tool who kills without morality. And what a kick-ass fight, with plenty of Easter eggs and callbacks. I like that at first, Walker fights close quarters, refusing to let go of the shield, instead preferring to use it as a blunt object. And when Bucky catches the shield, it's nearly a beat-for-beat recreation of his fight with Steve and the Winter Soldier. Now, this dynamic is also the reverse of the final fight in Captain America Civil War, where Bucky and Captain America fought a non-powered hero with tech. The shield drop at the end is also a callback to Civil War, except now it's Sam taking the title instead of Steve laying it down. Walker sandwich! This fight is also loosely adapted from the comics, where Steve Rogers had to fight Walker to get him to lay down the shield. And how about this moment where Sam tries to wipe away the blood? He feels responsible for what happened because he's the one who gave up the shield in the first place.
It belongs in a museum.
The government swoops in to take control and give the character some downtime. Sam leaves the wings with Joaquin Torres.
You forgot the wings.
Keep them.
Now remember, in the comics, Torres becomes the new Falcon, so I'm betting he'll use his science abilities we saw in Episode 1 to fix the wings and become Cap's new sidekick. Walker is brought before a panel to answer for his crimes, just like he did in the comics after going on a murder spree. Now, I actually thought this scene was heartbreaking. The show has done a great job of speaking to veterans' issues, like PTSD and lack of financial aid, and here we see what a lot of vets faced after coming home. The government turned them into killers and then rejected them.
I only ever did what you asked of me, what you told me to be and trained me to do, and I did it.
It wasn't my war. You asked me, I didn't ask you. And I did what I had to do to win.
During this scene, you can also hear this haunting, sad theme from Civil War.
It is the order of this council that you...
And then, Julia Louis Dreyfuss shows up as Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, basically playing Selena Meyer in the MCU.
Really, Amy? Because I've met some people, okay? Real people. And I got to tell you, a lot of them are idiots.
This is a huge surprise, not just because of the actor, but the character that she's playing. Valentina goes all the way back to the early Nick Fury comics by Jim Steranko. She was a top S.H.I.E.L.D. agent and Nick Fury's lover, but years later she joined Hydra and took on the name Madam Hydra. Now in this show, she might also be the Power Broker. After all, the Power Broker is after the Flag Smashers and so is John Walker, so it makes sense that she would recruit him. But I'm still holding out hope that she's just working for the Power Broker and that the secret villain is actually Arnim Zola in a robot body. Also, introducing an ex-S.H.I.E.L.D. agent turned rogue might be a way of foreshadowing that Sharon Carter is evil now. Now, this scene is also very true to real life. Many vets have a hard time adjusting to their old lives back home, so they take jobs with private contracting companies like Halliburton and become members of private militaries overseas. Now, I did think it was a little bold of Carly to return to her hideout, but their operation runs really deep. I'm sure she had people on the inside telling her that it was clear. Now, for the flag smashers to stay on the run like this, hiding their global network in plain sight, they would have to have top-notch cybersecurity. I would recommend they try NordVPN, the sponsor of this week's video. I love using NordVPN because it helps me get the most out of my Disney Plus subscription. See, outside the US, Disney actually offers a whole other programming slate called Star that's filled with mature content. There's adult sitcoms, dramas like Lost, or major franchises like Planet of the Apes or Aliens. Nord has thousands of super fast servers all over the world, so you're able to register your IP address from another country where you can watch R-rated content on Disney Plus. If you are interested, go to nordvpn.com/ScreenCrush to get a huge discount off a 2-year plan. And use the code ScreenCrush to get an extra month for free. And if you find out the service isn't right for you, no pressure, there is a risk-free 30-day money-back guarantee. Lots of other streaming sites offer different programming in other countries. Using NordVPN is the best way to get your money's worth out of all your streaming services. It's like adding free streaming sites on top of the ones that you're already paying for. Again, visit nordvpn.com/ScreenCrush or use the code ScreenCrush to get your free month, or just click the link down in the description. Back to the Easter eggs.
Why don't you put on your running shoes and get to the point?
Next, we go to Zemo at the Sokovian Memorial. Now, I love the detail of the Sokovian flag here, which we've only ever seen in the background in Age of Ultron. That's nice production design, team. When the scene opens, there's another musical callback, Zemo's theme from Civil War. And part of the reason there's so many of these musical motifs and callbacks to past MCU films is because Henry Jackman composed The Winter Soldier, Captain America Civil War, and this show. I also thought it was a nice touch that the statue isn't of a brave Sokovian soldier, it's a family. To show they didn't just lose lives, they lost a home. This is also subtly reminding us of the Maximoffs and Baron Zemo's family. And the text at the bottom is a touching tribute to your mom. Notice the memorial is on the lip of a large crater created by Ultron, now filled with rainwater. I'm still wondering if maybe Wanda's cabin is on the other shore of this lake. Like maybe she's on the other side of this conversation, making tea and learning evil. After Bucky proves, once again, that he's not a killing machine, Zemo is arrested by the Dora Milaje. Now notice they are traveling in the Royer Talon fighter that we first saw in Black Panther. Or, as this kid calls it,
That's like a Bugatti spaceship.
Ayo says,
"We will take him to the Raft."
Now this is the prison for superpowered people that we first saw in Captain America Civil War. But also, this moment, this one line could have huge implications for the future of the MCU. Last we saw, the Raft was supervised by General Thunderbolt Ross. For a while now, we've speculated that he might create his own team of ex-criminals, the Thunderbolts, named after him, Thunderbolt Ross. And in the comics, the Thunderbolts were originally led by Baron Zemo. Now we actually have a video coming out soon about Zemo, the Thunderbolts, the Dark Avengers, and the future villains of the MCU. So subscribe and ring the bell so you won't miss it. Ayo also reminds us that Bucky is nicknamed
White Wolf.
who is the head of Wakandan secret police in the comics. Now I think it's funny they still call him this because this is just a nickname given to him by some kids. It would be like if John Walker's superhero name was Captain Squishy Face. Sam goes to Baltimore,
If you walk through the garden,
where he runs into Isaiah's nephew, Elijah. Now, in the comics, Elijah becomes the hero Patriot and leads the Young Avengers. We actually did a whole video about Elijah and the Young Avengers and the future of the MCU. Check that out if you have time. Sam's talk with Isaiah is the crux of the episode. Like Walker, the old man is another soldier who was abandoned by his government. But most importantly, Isaiah is able to articulate all the doubts that Sam is feeling.
If they did, no self-respecting black man would ever want to be.
Later on, Bucky says,
When Steve told me what he was planning, I don't think either of us really understood what it felt like for a black man to be handed the shield.
and I never thought about it either. I mean, I think most white people wouldn't.
Well, I don't look at the world through that lens.
But like a lot of minorities, Sam can't simply separate his race from the equation because that's what some people will always see first. In this line,
They will never let a black man be Captain America.
is actually what happens in the comics when a black person on the selection committee says that America isn't ready for a black Captain America. Now, I know that some of you down in the comments are going to be like, well, why does the show have to be political and about racism? Well, it's political because this is what Captain America looks like. He wears the flag. And he's always been about fighting racism. This is his first appearance, puncturing history's greatest racist monster a year before America even entered World War II. Also, this is all in keeping with the comics. When Sam became Captain America, he decided he wasn't going to keep his political opinions to himself, and there was significant public blowback. Isiah mentions,
I saw men in the Red Tails, the famous 332,
which was the nickname of the Tuskegee Airmen, an all-black fighter squadron in World War II. But also in World War II, the Army injected black soldiers with syphilis and didn't tell them. These experiences served as the inspiration for Isiah's story.
They tell us it's tetanus.
Just like in the comics, Isiah was part of an involuntary experiment with several other black soldiers. He was also arrested and jailed in the comic, essentially for disobeying orders. And, also in the comic, his wife never believed the lie that he was dead. Like Steve Rogers, she held on to an unwavering truth. Isiah is mourning the loss of his history.
They erased me, my history, but they've been doing that for 500 years.
This spooky thing called slavery happened and my entire ethnic identity was erased.
So this all gives Sam a lot to think about. Can he become a symbol of America? Should he become a symbol of America? I mean, it's not very subtle that his nephews keep calling him Uncle Sam! He's also facing the erasure of his own personal history, selling his family's boat and home. But the Wilsons get their George Bailey moment as the community pitches in to help. My favorite line of the episode was Bucky talking about his metal arm.
Well, I don't always think of it immediately. I'm right-handed.
Now this is funny, but it's also saying that the machine part of Bucky, the Winter Soldier part, isn't dominant. He still thinks of himself as a man first. And then the show takes a break for a feel-good montage. So here's a question for you. What the hell is Sharon up to? We theorized in a past video that she's either working for the power broker or she's a government agent deep undercover to infiltrate his organization. But in this episode, we hear her hire Batroc the Leaper.
Oh, please, if it weren't for me, you'd still be rotting away in that Algerian prison.
And not only that, but she says,
I can give you double this time.
Implying that she was the one who hired him for his job in the first episode to kidnap the American commander. But at the end of this episode, we see that she's actually hired Batroc to work for the Flag Smashers. So is Sharon Carter playing both sides, putting the Flag Smashers and the power broker against one another for her own profit? Maybe. But more likely, I think the power broker wanted to hire Batroc to help the Flag Smashers so they could undermine the GRC. The power broker wants the world to be destabilized, to grab more power for him or herself. Now, we made a video about the theory that Sharon Carter is actually a brainwashed Hydra plant and she was working with Zemo way back in Civil War. I'm starting to think that theory makes more and more sense, especially since she's repping supervillains to work with terrorists. But let's face it, she's probably just going to end up being the power broker.
Which I admit is both bogus and sad.
Now there may be a clue in the artwork that opens this scene. This is called The Raft of Medusa by Theodore G. This actually has nothing to do with the Greek myth of Medusa. Instead, it depicts the real-life shipwreck of a French ship called the Medusa. 147 survivors scrambled onto a raft. In 13 days, 132 people died, and the survivors had to eat the dead. Symbolically, this is the situation that Sharon finds herself in. She was a member of the government who's now been abandoned, and she's forced to cannibalize the people around her to survive. It's also not an accident that the shot focuses on the slave at the center of the painting, the only black man in the work. Now, in real life, this was a military ship en route to Africa to reinforce the slave colony of Senegal. As a result, this became a famous painting among abolitionists, a way of showing that God punished the sailors for the sin of slavery. Back at Sam's, we see that Bucky is wearing dog tags, which is interesting. His tags weren't actually recovered from the train accident. Presumably, Hydra had them afterwards, but probably didn't keep them. I checked, and there is no provision in the US military for reissuing dog tags. This leads me to believe that Bucky is actually wearing the dog tags of his friend Steve Rogers as a tribute. Hey, you know this line?
Steve is gone.
Is he? Or is he just old now? The museum exhibit in episode 1 didn't specify, it just said that he went off to live his life. I think the undertone here is that Chris Evans is gone and not Steve Rogers. Now notice that in civilian life, Bucky always wears blue, the color that his character wore in the comics. And I loved when it took Sam, a veterans counselor, to help Bucky understand what it means to be a hero. Helping people isn't about kicking ass or avenging. You need to
be of service.
And you know, it never occurred to me how terrifying it would be to have this shield thrown right at you. It's a fitting symbol for Sam. He has to learn to embrace the shield's legacy, no matter how scary. Sam tells his nephews,
all day, man.
A reference to Steve's favorite catchphrase.
I can do this all day.
Yeah, I know.
Thanks Mal Fury and Rage for pointing that one out. The GRC's meeting is being broadcast on WHIH, the MCU's in-universe news network that we've seen on WandaVision and various social media. The GRC meeting seems designed after the War Room in Dr. Strangelove.
You can't fight classified in here. This is the war room.
Now, I don't want to spoil this movie for you. It's my second favorite movie of all time. But basically, both the GRC and Dr. Strangelove feature a very small group who are determining the fate of the entire world. Friend of the show, Kevin Hamilton, pointed out that the Patch Act the GRC is about to pass could be named after Wolverine's pseudonym that he uses while in Madripoor. When the Flag Smashers took control, the code words and the spy elements seemed like they learned from Hydra.
One world, one people.
Again, lending to the theory that they are being manipulated by the power broker, whether it's Arnim Zola, Madam Hydra, or brainwashed Hydropon Sharon Carter. And we have a brief mid-credit scene of John Walker, fully healed, thanks to the super soldier serum, making his own shield. Notice he's embedding it with the Medals of Honor, a way of ironically using the accolades they gave him to claim authority. But also, the hammering and man cave feel calls back to Tony Stark, building his Mark I armor. Like I said in our last video, the show keeps emphasizing how the world is upside down now. Things that were good have become inverted and evil. Case in point, now the Tony Stark origin story is being used to create a villain instead of a hero. Well, that's all the Easter eggs that I found, but if you found any, let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and ring that bell. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Arey.